Alright, welcome back to another episode of Dirty Dave's Garage. We're going to look at changing out the brake pads on this 2001 Jeep Cherokee. If you look in the back window, or the back of the, we got the wheel off, we're going to look at the caliper. You can see it's pretty much pushed out. If you look at the little bellows there, if you can see the pad, there's not much left. So we're going to pull them off, put some new ones on. I got them ordered. They should be here tomorrow, but we're going to take them out today, so we'll be ready to go. I'm going to show you how we do that. Alright, we're going to start by removing these two 10 millimeter bolts in the back here. I'm trying to do this one-handed as usual. So you'll see one here and one down below right here. You don't unhook the banjo bolt on the brake line, just the bolt at the top and the bottom, the two 10 millimeters. I'm going to loosen, I've already got them loose. I'm going to go ahead and take them the rest of the way off, then we can get this caliper out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and probably run out and get a couple rotors to put on to go along with the new pads I'm putting on. When I first looked at it, I thought, they're still okay, but they look a little rough. I think these must have been on there when I bought this. I thought maybe I'd replace them when I first bought it, but I don't think I put those on there. So we're going to get some new rotors to go along with the new pads, and then we'll take a look at the caliper once we get it off, make sure that's in good shape, and get some new brakes on. Alright, just a quick update. I'm using a pry bar to start working the caliper loose. I've got the bolts out, but you know, from the pads digging into the disc, it makes a lip around the edge here where the pad doesn't touch, so they're getting hung up there. So I'm just using a pry bar. I'm working it out across the top. You got these two tabs up here you can kind of pry against. Let's see if I can show you. Kind of just using this to work it out, and it's starting to come free. But I should be able to get that off. But you may have to, you know, carefully slide that off so it comes off over that ridge and pushes the caliper back in a little as you work it free. Once you get them loose, you'll be able to push the caliper back into the piston back into the caliper to give you room to put your new shoes on, because they're going to be a lot thicker than the old ones. So I just wanted to give you a heads up about that real quick. Alright, so we got our caliper loose. I brought it up top. I just set it up here temporarily just so I could show you what we're talking about. These are your two brake shoes. They just pop out. This one has kind of like a spring clip. The one here up against the piston that kind of clips into the piston, so it should just pop off. This one, you can see it's got a little set of like spring tabs. It should just slide right up and out. You don't want to let this hang by the brake cable. So I've got an old piece of electrical wire here. I'm going to be stringing it up and tying it off around the springs just to keep the weight off of it while I get the pads out and put the new pads in, push the piston back in, whatever. So I just wanted to show that to you real quick, give you an idea what was happening. Alright, so we got our brake pads out. They just popped right out. Something I wanted to show you real quick though, before we push that piston back into the caliper, you should probably open up your brake reservoir, brake fluid reservoir. Just loosen the cap, because when you push that in, it's going to push brake fluid back up into the master cylinder. Probably what we'll do while we're doing this, since we're going to all this trouble, is suck some of the old fluid out with a turkey baster and pour some fresh brake fluid in as well. It's not a bad idea to do that occasionally and keep all your hydraulic systems clean. So we're going to get on that and be right back. Alright, so to push this piston back in, I went and grabbed one of the old, the back half of the old brake shoes. I've got this tool here. It's perfect for this car. It's just a little cheapo tool. Put your old brake pad in there into the shoe, and then lay this in there kind of in the same direction. You see it's shaped kind of like a brake shoe with the curvature. But try to get it in the middle of the brake pad, just makes it a little easier. And you just want to start cranking down on it until it pushes that piston back in. So you'll turn it, you'll feel it get tight, and then it'll take a second to relieve the pressure, and you just keep turning it, and you're going to keep working it in until this thing's flat up against the back of the caliper. And you see it's moving. It just takes a while because it's pushing against that hydraulic pressure. So you turn it a little, let it sit, turn it a little more, and just keep giving it little turns, and it'll gradually push it back in. And that's why, you know, as we're pushing this in, it's pushing that fluid up in that reservoir. That's why I took the lid off so it had a place to go. Hopefully, you want to keep an eye on it too. We're only doing one at a time here, so it shouldn't push that much out, but you don't want that stuff spilling over the top. I'll take a look at it. It's actually getting pretty close, so I'm going to have to probably siphon a little bit of that old fluid out of the reservoir because I don't want it to overflow and get brake fluid all over the inside of the engine compartment because it will eat up your paint and whatnot. So I'm going to get some of that out, but this is how you get your piston back in. You just use one of these tools, you just keep working it, and again, keep an eye on your reservoir so the fluid doesn't overflow. I'll be back. All right, now you can see I've used that tool. We've got the piston pushed all the way back in. I just kept pressing it in, turning it in until you know, it wouldn't go in any further. You want it all the way down as far as it'll go because it's going to be tight once you get your new rotor and your new brake shoes in there. It'll be a tight fit. While you've got it apart, you want to check these rubber boots, make sure they're in good shape. Might not be a bad idea to pull them off, throw a little grease on those shafts, those collars, those bushings that the screws go through that you took off to remove the caliper. We'll take a look at that in a second and show you what I'm talking about. All right, so got the caliper hanging by a wire. I got some of this cheap parts store brake cleaner. Just going to spray it off a little, get any gunk off that's on it, any brake dust. I've got a drain pan down here just to catch all the crap that drips. This will clean all the brake dust off. Make it a little safer to deal with. You don't want to breathe in that brake dust and crap in. It should dry off in a minute. I'm just gonna, like I said, we'll take these boots apart. Make sure you spray them out good. Get all the gunk off of them. You go through this stuff fast and make sure you got a couple cans of it. We'll let that drip off. It'll dry in a few minutes and we'll take a look at those bushings. Alright, so I went to Napa, picked up a couple of these. These are like the better brake rotors. They're polymer coated. And I noticed normally when you buy brake rotors, they come in a plastic bag in the box. And they're covered in like an oily substance so they don't rust sitting on the shelf. These don't have that. If it did, we'd have to hose it off with some of that brake cleaner. I've actually put them in the laundry tub in the laundry room and just mixed a little dish soap and scrubbed all the oil off before I've put them on in the past. But these are dry. Try to keep my dirty hands off of them, and we probably don't have to do anything. I'll give them a shot of brake clean, but I'm not going to waste a ton of it on them. But they just slide right up on your lugs. And once we get our brake pads, we'll put them in, we'll load them into the caliper, and then we'll slide the caliper back in place and put those bolts back in, and then we'll get the other side done and top off the master cylinder, and then we'll go over how you seat a new set of brake shoes. All right, we're back. Got our brake pads. Put our new rotors on that we picked up. I'm going to show you how these are going to go on. These are going to slide into the new caliper. This is the outside one, and you can kind of follow the shape of the caliper. I'm just going to pop them on, slide it down into place, and they may move a little bit because they'll have to go into those other pieces. This one's pretty simple. It's just a spring-loaded clip that goes in that hole here in the middle of the piston. So just make sure you got it going the same way. Slide it in there. Actually, should have put this one in first, because the other one might be in the way. We got it in. And just pop it in the hole. should snap into place like that. Now that we got our pads loaded, we're going to take some brake grease. And you can buy this by the tube. This just happened to come with some other brakes I had. You just want to put it on these spots where the metal's going to be contacting. Not a lot, you don't want it all over the place. But get it in all these little grooves. It's just to help them move around when they need to, both ends. Alright, now comes the fun part of trying to fit this back onto the rotor. So we're going to see if we can get that done. Wipe that grease and any extra dirt off my hands. We're trying to keep our rotors clean as possible. Now, I have a longer brake hose on mine, so I got a little more play, but you want to, the way these work, make sure you just sandwich it between the rotor and that bottom piece. I'll try to keep it down there, and then, actually, you know what? Let me think a second. I might have to put the top end in first. Let's see. Working too well, is it? So much. Unless we got these upside down, which is always possible. Well, I know I got the right shoes. Actually, it looks like this end should hook in first. Make sure these are pushed back. Make sure you push back your cylinder pistons. So they'll slide in where they belong. Because it's in the way, that's what's happening. There we go. Everything lined up. With the bottom, yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and take one of these bolts, slide it in, so get it lined up. A little extra light though. Come around this side. Alright, now I got a little light on the subject. Up. Okay, so we got our calipers in, our caliper back in with the new shoes. It took some finagling, I'm not going to lie to you. What I ended up doing is kind of getting the top parts in position first and just get that top bolt through and then start tightening it. I had to use a little bit of a pry bar against this bottom lip part of the caliper bracket to push it until I could get that key bolt to catch. Once I got that going, I tightened it up a little bit with a 10mm wrench. Then I got the bottom one in, same way, just jiggled it with a little pry bar. Got that one started and then just tightened them up gradually. You make sure you don't cross anything. But it's all bolted in now. You probably see a little gap there because we haven't got in the car and started it up and compressed the brakes yet, because we still got to do the other side. But when you're done, just wipe off any dirt you might have got on your new rotors before you put your wheel back on. You know, just clean them up as best you can. Make sure there's no grease all over your new rotors, as you want them clean when you go to seat the brakes, which we'll talk about seating the brake pads in just a little bit. But for now, till we seat the brake pad, I'm going to go put this tire back on, and I'm going to go do the other side. Then we'll come back and talk about seating your brake pads with your new rotors. Okay, we are back. Had a little snafu. I wasn't going to film doing the other side, but got over here working on this, and I lost my cameraman, so I'm by myself. I'm doing the best I can with one hand. Got the caliper apart, got it all pushed back in, and realized this shaft over here, bushing, is like seized up, and it doesn't want to move. I mean, I can hammer it and move it, but it's not moving freely like this side was. You can see, you can push this side in pretty freely both directions. This side's pretty much stuck. So I just stopped. I thought I may as well video record this because I'm going to replace this caliper too. Went out to Advanced Auto. They had one online. Rebuilt one for 25 bucks. After you take the core back, it was like 55 bucks, but I get 35 back or something when I take this old one back. So basically, to swap this out, we need to remove the brake line from the back, which is going to cause it to leak out some brake fluid, which I was hoping to avoid. That's this bolt here. It's called a banjo bolt. Hopefully you can see that. It's the one your brake line's connected to. So we're going to have to pull that off. I'll try to stick the hose up in the air so I don't lose too much fluid, because I've already drained a lot out trying to replace the old fluid that was in the master cylinder. But we're going to unhook that, put the new one on, and then we'll finish the other side up, and we can get to the break-in part that I was hoping to get to next. So stay tuned. I'll probably make a separate video with this as well, how to replace a brake caliper. It's not a big deal, but it's kind of easier to do it when you're doing the brakes. You may as well do it all at once if you find something wrong. Some people might just replace this bushing and hope for the best, but I figure for 25 bucks I'm just going to get a totally rebuilt caliper and put on, because my kids drive this car and I want it to be safe. So I'm going to get that banjo bolt off, and we'll transfer my new brake pads to the new caliper and get that going, and then we'll get to the break-in the break-in section. Thanks. All right, so we swapped out the caliper, got the new caliper on. Came with a new bolt, new banjo bolt, and new washer. The washer goes next to on the outside of the bolt. Then you put your brake line fitting up against the caliper, put your bolt through both, and just thread it in by hand until you get it started. Then tighten it up good and snug. I tried to do it quick so I didn't lose a lot of brake fluid. Hopefully I won't have to bleed it too much. I'm just going to do a gravity bleed and hope for the best. But your bleeder screws over here. That's how you bleed the air. You got to bleed the air out of your brakes once you open the system. I was hoping to avoid that in this little caliper rotor, or new pad and rotor job, but and since we had to open up the brake line, now we're gonna have to bleed it. Always got to get the air out. So we're gonna put our calipers back, or our pads back into the new caliper on this side, and get this buttoned up so we can get out and get on with the seating of the new brake pads. Alright, got our new caliper on with our new brake pads. Just a tip, Put your brake pads in, get them loaded in the caliper first. Then at least on these Jeeps, they kind of hook over. I don't know if you could see this. Let me move the light. The bottom of the pads, which is right here, kind of hooks over that little ledge or the bracket there. The top one just has a tab, like a stop tab, you'll see. The other one has a tab on both sides. It kind of sits in the bottom like a socket. But it might be easier to run that bottom bolt in first and then push the top up kind of like a hinge and just close it, and then get your top bolt in up here and just start it by hand. Once you get it in, and it won't back out, it looks like, you know, it's not cross threaded, and you can start tightening it up. I didn't mention bolt sizes because the old bolts were one size. I think they were 10 millimeter. The new ones were 12. So you never know what you're going to get when you get to the parts store and get back. Bolt sizes can change, but they're on. It looks good. Got the new rotors on, so we're going to put the tires on and get this thing off the lift, and then refill the brake reservoir with some fluid and try to bleed this one out, make sure there's no air, and I'm sure there is some air, but got nobody to help me, so I can probably do it with my vacuum pump, hook a vacuum pump up to the bleeder valve and just suck the brake fluid through until just juice comes through. But I might try to do it by gravity, just opening this up, cracking the nut on the bleeder, and just wait till nothing comes out but brake fluid. I got plenty of brake fluid and it's not expensive, so just make sure you got a catch pan underneath to catch any that you lose. Alright, so we're going to get that done and we'll get the wheels on and go for a brake break-in. Okay, we're back. We got the Jeep back together. We're going to try and seat these pads. I pumped up the pedal, got my brakes pumped up. Here's how I do it. When I get new pads on, fortunately I live on a big hill. I start off going slow, maybe 10 miles an hour, foot off the brake, and then gradually and slowly apply pressure until I come to a complete stop. Then I do it again. This time I try to get up to 20 miles an hour. And again, gradually put the brakes on, come to a complete stop. And I'll do this a couple times. No more than 20 miles an hour, 15, 20 miles an hour. And just gradually apply pressure, slow and steady, till I come to a stop. And get around the curve here. We're gonna go down the hill, maybe get up to 25 this time. And again, slowly apply pressure. This time I'm going to do it hard. Get up to 20 mile an hour and put the brakes on hard. And that should seat your brakes and have them start digging into your rotors. Get them set for you. Make sure everything's working right before you get out on the open road. I think we're good to go. Brakes seem to be working okay, so I'm gonna go for a quick test drive. And thanks for watching, and just send me a comment if you have any questions. Talk to you next time.